Right, well, yeah, until you said it.
Call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Park District. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam President, so we have the order of the agenda on the consent agenda, and we'd like to add an item to our agenda.
Okay, so then do we pull that out of the consent agenda or do we what's the procedure on that?
Ask that question again.
Maybe pull the order of the agenda out, and then we'll bring that up after that. That sounds like a plan.
Alright.
Oh.
Yeah.
I get it. So,
All right, I'll amend my motion to approve the consent agenda, minus letter C, order of the agenda.
Second.
all right. Amended motion. Any discussion? Jeff pulled the board, or no, Dave pulled the board. I saw Jeff and just instantly thought he should do that.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye. Is Jerry online?
He's online.
I'm online.
Sorry, Commissioner Rosted.
He's on.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. So adding an item to the agenda.
Yes, Madam President, we would like to add an item for number 7. It would be for board to consider for approval resolution providing for refunding improvement bonds, Series 2021A. And this would be for basically refinancing a previous bond. And if you have any questions, I'll turn it over to Mr. Leeds to my right.
Okay.
All right, I'll move to approve the agenda as presented with number 7. What
I'll
Lisa said.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
That bond thing.
Can we just vote en masse for this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Number 1, recognition of audience. Do we have anyone who wants to address the board? Okay. Joe Burkham?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joe Burgham. I live at 514 10th Avenue South. I just want to take a moment and just say thank you for the consideration around more public engagement for the pool. I know that there is a discussion happening right now about how do we go forward with design and better conversation. I think as I was here last month, champion public engagement, I just wanted to express that I think a lot of it comes down to the opportunity for a great design and how does working with the public help create ideas and bring people to the table to really push a design forward. In this work of creating great spaces for people, it really is about the design of the space and how do you create a space that welcomes people of different backgrounds that want to use the space in different ways. And of course, how do we maintain the space and how do we pay for the space and all those considerations. And so I hope is that the weeks continue. There's an opportunity to have public engagement, be a part of the process at Island Park, but thinking about design is something that we might consider as well. I had the pleasure of being in Cincinnati over the Memorial Day weekend, and they have some really beautiful parks in their community. And one of the things that I noticed that I'll maybe put out there is sort of an idea for Island Park and their Washington Square at the center of the city. They have beautiful planter beds full of perennials, big hostas and growing plants and bedding plants, and it was really beautiful to see. And so when I think about sort of what is the future of Island Park, there's a programmatic aspect. You know, is there a space for a hardscape dog park? You know, what do we need for parking? What's the opportunity with the pool? When we think about the whole space, I continue to invite the idea of a master plan, but also just thinking about the pool itself. You know, what would it be like to plant some perennials, things that are coming back every year that people want to come and appreciate? And so to me, that's just that attention to detail when we think about the design of space and that opportunity to really think about great public spaces. So again, thank you for hearing us last month and the continued work to think about design and public engagement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, next up, director's report.
Commissioners, you had asked that we put together a written report from several of our directors on our administrative team, and I believe we handed out, everybody get a copy of that. So I just want to thank Tara and all the other directors sitting up here with me for putting this together. It's a lot of good information, and if you want to review that in your free time, you feel free to discuss it with any of the directors that put those reports together. So I don't know if you have any questions at this time, probably haven't had a chance to review it, but
No, thank you for putting it together. It's, as we head into a busy season, it's just kind of nice to know what's happening
Mhm.
on your end and what your challenges are and your potential successes. So I appreciate that update.
yeah, and then just for a director's report for me, you know, as Joe discussed, we are looking at putting together an RFP that would include, you know, some type of, you know, pool design, public engagement, working in collaboration with the Island Park Master Plan, and we're trying to figure out how we can tie all these things together. So you know, we have a meeting set up for next Monday, and we'll discuss more items on that and how we can make this work. And then you know, at some time in the future, we'll reach out to the public. I'm sure we'll reach out to Joe and try to get as much input as we can.
Any questions for our directors tonight?
Did you want to make mention of the guests that are invited to that meeting?
Yeah, it was T.L. Celine and I can't remember his first name, Oslin, which is a landscape architect.
From New York City.
Yes.
Be interesting to hear what they have to say. All right, Foundation Director's Report. Brian.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a few items to report on today. First of all, the next foundation meeting is 2 weeks from yesterday. So the 21st of June, third Monday, of course, 1:30 in the afternoon. One of the items that we'll be discussing is a strategic planning effort that we visited about at the last foundation meeting. So we're going to send a poll out on Thursday of this week to park board members, foundation board members, and the director's team, just to come up with some thoughts on where the foundation's going to be when they grow up. I mean, what do we want to be? So be prepared. That'll come out by email on Thursday from the marketing department, the Park District Marketing Department. And share your thoughts, your vision. I mean, there's, I think, 14 questions. So it's not going to take an hour, but it could take 20 minutes. And just give us all you got. We want to hear, you know, what everybody's thoughts are about where we want the foundation to be, you know, in the next few years. So look for that. I want to thank all of you that were involved in the golf tournament. I know most of the park board were there. Appreciate your playing and, you know, helping us to have a really good event. You know, we thought it came off really well. We had 18 teams this year, which is the most we've had. Our goal is to turn that into a fundraising event, and next year I think we'll make some more serious strides. I mean, we raised some money this year, but a small amount, you know, $5,000 or somewhere in that range, and we think it's a $25,000, $50,000 event. So that'll be the efforts that go into next year. We continue to have productive meetings, fundraising meetings for the sports complex, and hope to have announcements in the next few weeks. I mean, had a really exciting meeting today, and I can't tell you any more about it than that. But we're hoping.
These are my favorite meetings, the ones you can't talk to us about.
Yeah,
Very exciting.
we're hoping that it'll have bear fruit in the next week or so. On the VSS side, Valley Senior Services, we opened our meal sites last week. So last Tuesday, day after the holiday, invited people to come back for meals. And honestly, people are a little bit nervous. The turnout's maybe 50, 60% of what it was pre-pandemic. It has built, you know, in the last week. We're going to start activities next week. And all this is on the advice of the state epidemiologist, Brendan Niesmeyer, who helped walk us through, you know, what can we do and how do we interpret the CDC regulations that come out. So he's pretty comfortable with us starting up activities. We talk a lot with people, you know, about what you can do if you're vaccinated versus if you're not vaccinated. You know, and it's all in the vein of a recommendation. There are no hard and fast rules from the CDC or the state of North Dakota for that matter. But we still recommend that people who are not vaccinated wear masks. It's a self-tell kind of thing though, so there's not really a way of knowing.
So Brian, when you say you talk to them about different things they can do to hopefully stay safe, are you doing that one-on-one? Is that information you're giving them when they show up? Is it, how does that get disseminated to your audience?
It's both, you know, we have a sign that's in the doorway and then like a posted information sheet that people see
Okay.
on their tables, or when they come in.
Got it.
But we talk with people as well. And you know, we're singing to the choir just a little bit. The senior population is probably about 80% vaccinated. You know, so it's a pretty strong number. And in talking with seniors that come to the center, you know, I'm hearing a lot of, yeah, I got both shots a couple months ago. You know, so they got out early and took care of it.
Yep. Well, I think a 50 to 60% start is probably okay. Gives you guys time. It gives those people time to get comfortable. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
guessing word of mouth is gonna, hey, Sally, it's not so bad. You should come out. You should come out. I think it'll be great.
Well, not surprisingly, they're waiting to play cards and bingo. I mean, they want to come for activities, you know?
Absolutely.
The food is a little bit of bait, but it's the activities that get them there.
Yep.
So we're hoping and optimistic that things will keep progressing forward, and as summer moves on, we'll move back to a more normal pace.
Thank
So
you.
that's just a little update on us. We're always looking for Meals on Wheels volunteers, 293-1440. Call us early, call us often. Thank you.
Thanks,
I have a
Brian.
question.
Yes.
Did I see somewhere where you're going to be celebrating an anniversary of the foundation?
Yeah, Valley Senior Services, actually Fargo Senior Commission on Aging started 50 years ago this year. It's our 50th anniversary. So we're putting together an event for late summer, probably be at Row Farm outside, and just an opportunity to talk about, you know, the last 50 years, everything that's happened, and how excited we are, you know, of what we've been able to do.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Who are you inviting? Everybody that's been involved for the last 50 years?
You know, it's going to be a community celebration, so we're going to kind of market it that way. I mean, we're going to do a volunteer event early on that day to thank our volunteers that deliver Meals on Wheels and help at senior centers. And then it'll transition into the 50th anniversary celebration later in the afternoon. And it'll be a community open house, so anybody will be able to come, including all of you.
Well, if you offer cards and bingo, apparently
I'll have-
they'll be there.
Yeah, we're certainly going to play bingo. And we'll have pool tables there too.
Oh,
That's an inside joke.
You might want to be careful. You're getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, it's an inside joke. Scratch that one.
Sounds like fun.
It will be. Thank you.
All right, next up, board to consider for approval updates to alcohol policy. Carolyn Boutin and Dave Leaker presenters.
Commissioners, in your packet is a update to the policy that was discussed at the last month's board meeting. And some of the highlights of the changes, again, are that we have not updated the policy for quite a while and needed to look at how we do property that's owned and managed by the Park District. And so that is directly related to our relationship with Broadway Square. And so that's in there, as well as the discussion on the use of, or I should say the consumption or sale of alcohol. And so we made updates to that. We also found that with some of the events that we have going on, some of the vendors do not have a city license, but they only have a state license. So we included and/or for the city and state license requirements. And then we had, as you remember at the last meeting, a discussion on what constitutes beer, what constitutes wine. And so that was defined in the policy that you would see up there as well. And And then the biggest change that we had since the last meeting is our changes to Schedule A and B. And those schedules, we have added on Schedule A, the consumption permit, information about daily and seasonal permits and define that on each of the locations. And that you'd see up here in the purple, and made some other housekeeping notes like Anderson Softball Complex. We've sold one of the parking lot properties. And so that's no longer needed to be added on here. Lindenwood, Diamonds 3 and 4 no longer exist, so that was taken off. We updated the name of Trollwood Park, main shelter, and then the softball complex. And then we also added Broadway Square for consumption. I know we had some discussion in the past about whether or not that was necessary there. The events that are brought in, rentals, where a business is wanting to host their employees and maybe not sell alcohol at that event, but want to bring in some beverages so that they can have their party. That is the intent of that. It's not the intent of having individuals or small groups come in and have a daily permit. And again, the administration of that would happen through the staff that is at Broadway Square. And just to explain the daily permits at the complexes for softball and baseball, Sean on the staff does get requests from businesses, same concept. They want to do a team building event where they have a tournament with their staff and they'd like to bring in some beverages for that. And so that's what those are meant to handle as far as those requests. And then Schedule B, in the past, that has really only addressed the limited sales. And then we have done the full permits by lease arrangement and other things. And again, in review of this and discussing it with staff as well as legal counsel, we talked about broadening Schedule B to define limited and full permits on locations so people would have clarity as to what the board has already looked at and would encourage. And so then what you see is an updated list here that defines limited permits at most of our locations. We added Broadway Square with both limited and full permits, again, for fundraising events and other events that the sale of alcohol would be asked. And then the staff added Oak Grove and Trollwood Park, basically because they're finding that with some of the construction that we're doing, some of the other sites that are normally used are not available, and they wanted to have a little bit more option to give the public when they're doing their events. And then we included those sites that have lease arrangements already, which Rose Creek, Edgewood, Osgood. And then in the notes or in the packet I sent out late today, we also added the curling club because we forgot to add that one. And so those are the updates to the alcohol policy. Would be happy to take any more questions. Would ask if it's okay that with the board that we would approve it as presented if you are content with the changes.
Did it, and this the policy makes it easy to understand and easy to maneuver for our staff when requests are made and easy to explain to people how things are?
Yeah, anything in writing is much more helpful. And obviously the board's passing this gives the staff the understanding that the board is in agreement with what's going on. Kevin can address how his staff feels about the policy.
Yeah, it's been well received from a staff standpoint. It's pretty cut and dry. They've been dealing with this for several years right now, so the added ones won't be an issue at all.
Okay. I'm sorry. Doesn't hinder, it doesn't block anything. It makes it the whole process easy. I guess I'm just making sure we don't throw too many roadblocks in, but yet enough to keep things in order.
Yeah, anything that happens in our parks, we get facility use agreement, and it would be the same thing at Broadway Square. So they have to run through the process. And Marcy's pretty much got that checklist that she covers every detail, whether it's insurance or if they need the permits from the city or the state. So this will clarify a lot of having Broadway Square on there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have somewhere that we define season pass and daily pass, or season permit and daily permit?
It's on the permits.
So would it be fruitful to put it in here to clarify?
I mean, I think those are signed off on, so those are dealt with on an individual basis.
So it's an attachment to this probably, so it could
It can
maybe
be.
just be referred to that way.
Yeah, it can be.
I just think that because our season permits typically, well, maybe always, are attached to a team, right? Softball is
Yep.
typically where season permits happen. I think it might just be good to clarify, or if it's with it, that works too.
Yeah.
So somebody doesn't come in and say, well, I want a season permit for the shelter at Urban Plains.
And Kevin, don't you write the dates on the permit? So say it was softball would be through August 15th or
It's,
something.
no, it's through October because
October.
our co-ed, our 16-inch softball leagues run through then. So all those permits do end at that time.
Yeah, and I mean, I got that email that you said, that clarification, so that was great, thank you. But what I'm wondering is if someone pulls this up and says, oh, I'm gonna get a season permit, some clarification to the public who wants to get one.
Yeah, the dates are on the actual facility use agreement that they fill out.
But does it say who can get a season permit and why or
It's-
how or?
Dates, who is filling it out? I'm not exactly sure the question.
Who's qualified to apply for it?
Yeah, who can get a season permit? So for example, I'll go back to I think we have Southwest on here. Well, the Anderson Softball Complex, Southwest Youth Ice Arena parking lot. Let's say I'm using the building for something with youth and I decide that I want to hang out with my parents in the parking lot. Can I get a season permit? So you're selling a season permit to a softball team who's using the softball diamonds in
Right.
adult league or whatever. So is there, do you know what I mean? What if I come in and I say, hey, I want it for our XYZ 14-year-old
Oh,
roller
okay.
hockey team.
I get
And
you.
we're gonna sit in the parking lot and consume alcohol.
Yeah, we get that list of teams that are in the league up at the softball complex. So we know who's buying those permits.
I think if I'm understanding
Throw
the
me a
question
bone.
correctly, yeah,
Yeah.
they still have to go through our facility use agreement process, which would vet out all of those questions. And that's kind of the safeguard I think I'm understanding you're looking for. So in the facility use process, we are very thorough about what is the intended use and where is that use at. And it would still have to then correlate to what this policy is. And that's what our staff would do is they wouldn't allow that for certain functions outside of the policy. And we know that in that instance you provided, we would not grant a permit for that reason.
So let's just say you're all gone and we're all gone. How does the next employee know that? I mean, would it make sense to have that? I don't know. I just feel like it's not written anywhere.
But it's
How do
part
we
of,
make sure that's how it goes?
but it's part of the permit process. So first you come in and you say, I want a permit.
The
For
the
the
permit is
facility.
part of the overall process. It is a portion, whether it's a special event or a facility use agreement, all of these permits are a portion of that larger process. So to your point, Vicky, I think we could allude to that in some way that, upon completion, or I don't know the exact language, but maybe it makes sense that we have that in there, that it alludes back to the process that's used. And, people can speak out if I'm speaking inaccurately, but that's the way that, these permits are triggered by the larger process of when we have a special event or a facility use.
And I think the other thing to consider is we don't want to put too much in this policy that may eventually get defined differently or changed, because then we have to always go back into the policy.
Sure.
And if we were to add a definition, I wouldn't put it in the policy. I would add it as another schedule or put it in some other capacity that, again, it's a little easier for us than to say, oh, this wasn't clear enough, or we need to be a little looser.
Yep. Well, and that application could serve as that.
Right.
Because it's going to refer to it as a season or a daily, and then maybe there's just a definition of what that, or who's eligible. I'm just,
No, and I think if we could include in the application, that would make it easier for staff to utilize this policy.
sure. And then, of course, the user sees it right there when they're filling it out.
Right.
I was just going to agree with what Carolyn said. It seems like some of this is more procedural stuff that ties back to a policy.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's just a step.
Right.
First, you rent the facility and then you say, oh, by the way, I want to have this type of event.
Correct.
Well, that triggers this process.
And as things evolve, you can make changes to the process without having to change the policy.
Right.
Okay. Any more discussion or questions for Carolyn or staff?
So we're looking for,
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve as presented.
I'll move to approve. Oh, go ahead, Ray. Go ahead, Jerry.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have more discussion?
2 firsts and 2 seconds.
All right, Dave, pull the board.
Cool.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch.
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries. Next up, do you want two, is this going to be separated out or do you want fees all in one?
I can't remember what we've done in the past.
Separate, okay, I see a motion for each.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have board to consider for approval the following fees. First, we'll do golf, 2022 golf fees.
At the Facilities Committee, myself and Chris Creech presented the proposal for the 2022 golf fee proposals. As in the past, we are looking at the Consumer Price Index as our guide to these increases. And the business office has determined that in the last March to March cycle, 2.6% is what was seen. And so based with that number in hand, we made the increases for both green fees and season passes on the two schedules that are presented in your packet. Some notes to take from the green fee proposal. The ABC course at Osgood would stay at $6, so that's the same. Green fee rates are approximately 30% of the discount of adult rates. Junior rates are considered approximately 35% of the adult rates. The golf pros requested a new warm-up bucket because again, some folks don't want to hit a lot of balls. They just want to get a couple swings in. And with our new E-range machines, they're able to adjust the machines and have the buckets filled at these different numbers, 17, 34, 68, and 102. And then the pricing is adjusted accordingly. And so there's a $3 for the new bucket. And again, this is recommended by the golf staff. It would help with the requests that they've had. And then we also will continue to offer the fob with the E-range machine where you can get a 10% discount. And that's represented on there as well. And then the pass prices for season passes, again, a reminder that the 5-for-1 is only $98 over the regular adult 18-hole course cost. The adult par 3 is $73 over the adult Osgood plus rounding. Because again, these fees, as Past Board has requested, are rounded up to the nearest $5 or $0. And then the other, all the pricing configuration for the season passes is based on the percentage of the adult passes. And so just giving you, that's our base that we work off of. Intermediate and junior price percentages are being adjusted by the same step increases that were approved in the fall of last year in 2021. And all prices have been rounded like we talked. And the Elzagel Junior Pass has remained the same. That's $95 for the past 5 years. We would like to raise that to $100 because again, our goal is that the young golfer, the new golfer would start there and we want to make it affordable. So any questions on that? If not, we would just ask for approval of those fees so that then they can be applied to the budget that we will be presenting to you later in the next few months.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Carolyn? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Dave, pull the board.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries. I have to say, I had a comment from a mom today who bought the 3-hole loop pass.
Yeah.
For her 14-year-old son and said it's the greatest thing ever.
Super.
They live out there and he just goes out and plays little 3 holes all the time with his buddy and.
And that's the market we wanted for that.
Mhm.
They're the ones that don't want to play 9 holes.
No, it was perfect.
Thank you.
All right, next up, 2022 programming and facility fees.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, in your packet, there is a current fee structure. Again, as Carolyn indicated, the increase is the consumer price index of 2.6%. And we did round those up to round them up, or round them down to the nearest quarter, make it easier for everybody to make those payments. So really, it's pretty straightforward. Commissioner Dawson, you asked us to go through those to indicate team and individual, so we did that for some more information. So I would answer any questions you might have. Now, one thing I'd also add, as I mentioned in the facilities committee, is our field fees for baseball, softball, lacrosse, football. Those are not part of this right now because back in 2018, we did address those as a request from the commissioners to address those separately to go to an hourly rate instead of a per team fee or per player fee. So those will come back to the board next year to be addressed.
I have one question, Kevin. With these fees, we have a lot of user groups that will be affected, have, the youth baseball and hockey and all those. Have we socialized any of this with them, or are they aware of kind of our schedule going forward? So that no surprises or?
Yeah, the hockey, the Fargo youth hockey won't be an issue. As I mentioned, the field fees won't be addressed. And they were made aware of that last year as that 3-step process for the 3 years. So those will again come back to the board next year.
Okay.
All right, any more discussion?
Kevin, what's the difference between hockey novice, hockey team? That might be a
Hockey.
The novice team is $161 and the hockey team is $1,200. I want to be part of the novice.
Thank you.
That's really the beginner players that are coming in. So
the team costs $161?
yes.
Can you explain that a little? So hockey novice is that pickup?
Let's
Or
pick up. Yep.
So you just show up and you pay your $5 or
Correct.
whatever it is they're doing. Got it.
Correct.
So what's the $161 paying for? The ice time?
The ice time. Yep.
So that's an hourly 161,
Correct.
where the
Yep.
hockey team is a team that
Team.
signs up to play league.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Sorry.
Sorry, the numbers were just striking.
Yep.
Thank you.
So the league thing is for the season, the 12-14, that's a team for a season.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the 2022 programming and facilities fees?
I move that we approve the program and facility fees for 2022 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Thank you for your, attention to detail. It's a lot of work.
All right, Dave, pull the board.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
I have a question for Kevin. I was reading today in the newspaper about the ice sheets West Fargo is putting in. It didn't say in the article that I saw who the developer is. Do you happen to know?
I do not. Dave Leaker, do you know who that would be?
No, I don't.
Okay, thanks.
All right, number 6, board to discuss draft of logo use policy. Carolyn Boutain and Katie McCormick, presenters.
I'm going to hand this off to Katie, but just want to give you a little background again, reminding you that at the last board meeting, we discussed how the logos could be used in connection with the alcohol policy, and the choice was to pull that out, and staff was asked to go back and create a logo use policy. And marketing and Katie have taken the lead on that, and so they will present to you the information tonight. And again, at the facilities meeting, it was discussed that we would bring it for discussion. It can be approved tonight, or it can go back to staff for further adjustments.
Okay, so commissioners, in your packets, you have a copy of the policy as Carolyn explained. This is a new policy and so not one that we're bringing forward from before. I did quite a bit of research in reaching out to other organizations who have similar policies, which led me to the Rochester Downtown Alliance, Rochester, Minnesota. And I did a lot of conversation with Katie Adelman, their Director of Communications, about their policy. And so we based a lot of this policy using in front of you off of what they have done because it was working very well for them, which we really liked. So the policy as a whole is intended as more of the umbrella that kind of sets out the rules. We do have our separate branding guidelines, a document that would be available by request that goes into those things more in depth. And we also, as you will see, are available for answering any questions. It talks a lot about the logos as the property of the Park District, and that we reserve the right to revoke the approval of the usage of the logos at any time. The main parts that I would like to highlight is that we really put in some information about clarifying relationships so that people aren't just using a logo to indicate that they have our support or our submission for something and that it's something that they need to get permission for. We also, in bullet point 4, the sub bullet points there go through the manners in which you should not using them. Any manner false or misleading, connection with tobacco, firearms, or alcoholic beverages, illegal activities, anything libelous, any of those sorts of things as well. And that we also have some provisions in here about the goodwill generated by the use of the logo is to the benefit of the Fargo Park District and to nobody who's actually using the logo. Upon review with legal counsel, Carolyn set out, I think, a updated draft earlier today that includes Schedule A, which was their recommendation to add, which is just basically a list of logos that this would apply for. This would be logos that apply to Park District owned things or Park District managed opportunities as well. So with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So I haven't had a chance to read what Carolyn sent out today, but the question I had reading through the previous, this is really good work, and I can't understate the importance of brand identity and how our logo is used and in the right ways, in the right form. So this is really good. I think this is important. The one question I had is, I'm wondering if the one piece that we might need to address, and maybe it's coming, I'm not sure, is how do we determine a logo or a variant or whatever? So let's say I'm doing an event at Island Park, and I want to use the logo. Who do I go to work and get and who provides that approval from the Park District? Is it the event staff that's working with whoever vendor is doing something that they say, okay, here's the rules and regulations, I approve it? And then, and I take that and I ratchet it all the way up to Broadway Square, which is a significant, piece of our now portfolio. And when the Broadway Square logo came along, how did that get approved, or what's the process for approving that? Because to me, that's not an event, that's something higher up. And I'm just wondering if that's something that we need to address.
So Jerry, to address that, we've had those similar conversations, and what we had elected to do with that is include it as part of the branding guidelines and figuring it more as a procedure rather than adopting it into the formal policy.
So like, let's say Elola is coming online and they're going to create a name or something for the park that they're developing. Who would be the approving authority for whatever they're proposing? How would that work?
At this point, what we're discussing, including in the branding guidelines, would be that it would initially begin with the marketing department, and we would have that conversation, and then it would work its way through staff.
Does it rise to a board level decision or not?
In the current draft of the branding guidelines, no, it does not.
I'm not sure if I agree with that when we're talking about major facilities.
And we will be presenting the branding guidelines for the board to be familiar with and again, give us feedback on. Again, it's in its draft mode as we are pulling together. It will be right now 60 pages plus. So we want to make sure that we include as much as possible for you to look at. Again, some of it is repetitive because it may apply to Santa Village and the pond hockey and the Island Park Show, but it's got its own section, its own chapter. So this is good conversation, Jerry. We want to get that kind of feedback so that we can update the drafts and make sure that we at least include some dialogue or I should say some text that we can dialogue back and forth on.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of this as much as anything, protection for staff, because, we are doing a lot of partnerships. We've got the sports complex coming along. We did Broadway Square, we got Eola, whatever. And, if we as a board don't take action and provide some background and some, I'll call it a spine, it puts the staff in a difficult situation because they don't have any guidance to fall back on that says, yeah, we can do this, but no, we can't do that. I even think about, a variant logo and, let's pick on Starion Field. And I'm not trying to pick on anything in particular, but, when Starion Field got built, there was no guidance in terms of how that field was going to get named. And because of that, it's just Starion Field. And it kind of goes back to what Vicki talked about a couple of years ago about, we don't have logos on some of these facilities that are ours. And so I want to make sure that we have that level of guidance and even approval authority for who signs off on what, so that we want to have partnerships. We like the partnerships, but here's how we have to do it is where it ends up.
Jerry, Dave Leaker here, and Dave Beats made a comment regarding naming of parks. And, we typically name our parks through our developers agreement, and they're typically named after, whatever that development is. If it rises to a, whether it's a dedicated park or memorial park, those namings decisions do come to the facilities and then the full board. So actually all of our parks would go through that full process. That's just one example.
Would that include Broadway Square? Because that didn't come up to a board level.
But we don't own it, correct?
Yeah, that's a private park. And then also on Starion, we had an agreement with Fargo Youth Baseball for them to take over maintenance of that field, and Starion was part of that, or naming of the park through fundraising opportunities.
I guess to take Jerry's point a little further, and maybe not necessarily as much as in the approving of a logo, as much as, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but I think most people have similar feelings in the fact that in 2021, the new thing is public-private relationships, right? And that's the way of the future, and that's good for both sides. And I couldn't agree more about that. But at the same time, we as the board, park board, have an obligation to look out for the citizens, the community, the taxpayers. And so in the quest to move these things forward, the private business aspect is always going to want to do more and get more and go. And so I think, he is part of what he's saying, and part of what our concern is, we just want to make sure that that when it's appropriate, that we need to know what's going on in the process, so we can assure that we're comfortable with that next step. Am I completely off base in what I'm?
So Jerry, I'm getting feedback. Jerry, I think you bring up a really good point. I wonder if it has more to do with naming than logos. So I think we have two different things we're talking about here.
Yes and no. I mean, Starion has a logo, and Fargo Park Districts have a logo, but, and you look at, I just think that as much as I want to do partnerships and, the public-private partnerships like Joe talked about, we can't sacrifice our identity in the process. And, you know, and I want to make sure that people understand that, yeah, this is a partnership, but Fargo Park Districts is involved. And, you know, and I just don't want to see that get kind of missed in the effort to develop partnerships.
Yep, I totally agree with you. You know, I mean, you alluded to this earlier. You said that I had made this comment in the past. When you drive up to a building, walk up to a building, bike up to a building or a park or a facility or whatever, it should be very clear that it's Fargo Parks. If we have someone else who's part of it, that's great, but it should say Fargo Parks.
And in our discussions with, say, Sanford on the sports complex, we as a board have been very involved in that process. And we, from the get-go, explained that, you know, we need to have percentage signage representation to our percentage of involvement in the project. But obviously, at the end of the day, the businesses will always try to, you know, not take advantage, but simply brand themselves as much as they possibly can. And so I guess we just need to know that, so we don't end up with surprises and now, you know, things have progressed forward and we have to go backwards, and businesses get frustrated when that happens, because when businesses work together, they don't go backwards, right? But when businesses and private work together, or excuse me, businesses and public work together, and we move too quickly, and the public says, whoa, we need to take a step back here. It's much more difficult than it is to, you know, vet it properly. So I don't mean to muck up the water for what you're saying, Jerry, but I think that's kind of a concern we all are having as we develop more and more of these relationships, which I think are great, but we need to make sure that we don't open up our emails and get surprised at relationships that we think that we didn't know we had, and yada, yada. So.
But don't you think that staff should develop these guidelines, and then we should take a look at what they produce, and if it seems like it's adequate at this point, then we could approve it. If there seems to be any question about where it's going with any particular facility, I think the policy part of it and creating the guidelines is the most important thing, because we don't want to, on a board level, have to discuss every single project with, you know, infinite discussion.
I'd like to hang out with you, Katie.
I was gonna
So,
say,
Every t-shirt, every
Yeah.
chalk drawing.
No, and
So-
I 100% support that. So that's what I'm saying. We need to figure out where that threshold is so that triggers, hey, because, you know, we as a board, I think, have agreed that we don't want to get into the weeds and deal with the day-to-day operations of our staff. Yet at the same time, we can't get surprised by something that we feel like should have been a trigger, that we said, hey, we should take this to the board and just keep them up to date and see where they're at. Like, we need to define where that line is so that
and
everybody's
don't you think
comfortable.
that we can trust staff to figure out where that threshold
Absolutely.
is and
Yes.
bring it forward if there's any controversy or need to clarify? You know, I just think it's really important that that administration doesn't micromanage professionals. And if there are difficulties, we want to bring them forward. But if everything is going the way we all like it to see it go, then it seems like it's kind of micromanagement.
I'm kind of
But,
thinking.
you know, I don't know how many times it comes up either that there has to be a new logo. I mean, that was one of the questions. How many logos do you want? And then the possibility of also, you know, having the policy where this is how we approach that if we're partnering with a private entity. Does that seem reasonable?
I think we're talking about branding, we're looking at our identity, and I'm looking at a screen with 15 logos on it, and they're all us. And I think, maybe I'm off base, but in my mind, we need to find a commonality in our brand so that when people look at it, it may say Edgewood Public Golf Course, but everybody knows because of the way it's presented, it's a Park District golf course. Or, you know, Fall into Fargo is a Park District event. And so it's almost like we need to, the policy that we are putting in place for people to partner with us, and we say, you can use our logo in this manner, we need to do the same thing to ourselves. basically.
You know, normally if there's, the most important thing is the title, whether it's a person or a project or an entity.
Mhm.
So the title of the entity should come first. And then in the case of Edgewood, maybe Edgewood underneath. You know, Fargo Park District, this is what this is. But the second line is maybe it's smaller definition.
And I think we're kind of working through this rebranding of who we are. So at the north side pool, now it says Roger G. Grass. And then right underneath it is our logo. And so it just kind of all, I think it's a process, but I think you're right. We need to get the policy in place. Are we okay with the policy that was presented tonight? That would be a logo policy for partnerships coming to us to approve that and then come back with the rebranding policy and how we move forward with that? Or do we need more discussion and work?
Well, I have a couple of questions about the actual logo, whatever we're calling this, policy and brand use guidelines. Okay. Is there anything in here that talks about the size of our brand or logo versus whatever they're using it for? So let's say it says, we'll just pick something, Pepsi and Fargo Park District. Do we care if ours is bigger, littler, the same, minute? I don't know if that factors in or not. I'm not a marketing person. Katie, what are your thoughts?
We didn't go to that level because there, again, every situation is a little bit different. And so we have in there it can't be smaller than this and like the restrictions as to how they can use our logo, but we're not telling them in which way they have to use it because there, again, if we are just a supporting player versus if we're the main player, it's going to be different.
Okay, and then on number 7, I would say it's number 7, 3 from the bottom, you must upon request from FPD provide samples of any materials. Are you typically gonna look at these before they print 18,000 of them or already mail them out, or how's that gonna go?
Again, situationally.
Okay.
There are going to be some where we're going to have the request perhaps after. There may be some that would be before. It's going to depend on what it's being used for, if there's a facility use agreement in place,
Okay.
those types of things.
Well, and I would assume repeated
Mhm.
users who we have relationships with are gonna be different than
Than your-
somebody who
than your
says,
first time.
hey,
Yep.
I wanna do something that we've never heard about.
Yep.
Got it. Does this cover selling any products that have our logo on it?
No.
Do
We
we
have
need
not
to worry
delved
about
into
that?
that yet. Again, first things first, we have lots of people using it in many ways, shapes and forms that we don't want it to be used in. So this is helpful there. I don't think that's the second in line. I do think what we talked about with getting our house in order on the policies that we have for naming things and when things get branded and have logos, that can be the second. At some point, yeah, we might want to be selling things with our name on it or selling our brand similar to NDSU and how Shields has an agreement there. But this does not address that.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you for all your work on this. Holy moly.
And just an FYI, we're going through our facilities to look at logos and getting prices so we can get it in the budget. You know, you talk about the Coliseum is a big one. So we are going through those facilities to see where we can add those logos to those buildings.
Yeah, and through all of this, and we've talked about it, but I want to be, on record. I'm not against public-private partnerships and partnering with different organizations. I think that's healthy and important. I just want to make sure that we don't, the park district's identity doesn't get lost in it. And there again, I go back to if we need a policy level thing, particularly when it comes to naming facilities, if the birding festival needs to get approval, I don't think that's a board level decision, but certainly when it comes to facilities, I think, board needs to have oversight and make sure. And it sounds like we've got some of that, but I just want to make sure we're consistent and we've got it written down somewhere so that, again, it doesn't put staff in pressure spots to say, hey, we want to do this. And I like flexibility and I don't care for, policies that are too rigid, but at the same time, we have to make sure we have our outlines, clearly defined.
Agreed.
Okay. Are we ready to approve the current policy presented to us?
Oh, I thought we were discussing and
Or
you
do
said
you-
it was a
or do we
work
wanna-
in progress.
Do we want to keep work, do we want to go back to the drawing board?
Or was it proposed to be approved tonight? I thought you were
At the
just saying.
facilities, we talked about either or. The facilities did not want to recommend approval as is. They wanted more discussion. But if you so feel that you are comfortable with the changes and what's been presented tonight, definitely it can be moved to approve tonight as well.
And what'll be forthcoming then? More of the logo usage?
This particular policy is only for usage. What would be coming in, as I'm hearing from the board, is that there would be a policy that would talk about how naming and logos are developed for facilities and events. And we need to do some research for that.
I'm comfortable with that.
So Katie, are
Approve
you,
this. I'll move to approve this based on you'll be coming back with a second piece to the discussion about how naming rights and everything occur.
Second.
Second.
Katie, are you comfortable with this as it stands? You
Yeah.
don't foresee needing any changes and
No, and again, my conversation with Katie Edelman in Rochester was great, and it was really helpful as we flushed this out.
So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, Dave, poll the board.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch.
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 7.
thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Board to consider for approval resolution providing for a refunding improvement bond series 2021A. Brock Leitz.
Madam President and Commissioners, first of all, thank you for allowing us to bring this as a late addition, as it did not go through the Facilities Committee and then to the board. However, in this case, we want to make sure that we capture the opportunity to be good stewards of public funds and bring it to you as soon as possible. And I think you'll see evidence of that. We will remain diligent of bringing it through that process in the future. Our partners in putting this together just did not have the paperwork prepared in time for us to do that. So what you have in front of you tonight is really a simple refunding of an existing improvement bond that was issued by the Park District in 2013 for the purpose of Urban Plains and Eagle Point. PFM, as our financial advisor and partner, continues to look for opportunities when bonds become callable. If the market affords us the opportunity to save money, they would advise us to do so. In this case, these bonds are now callable. Typically, it's within 7 to 8 years they become callable. They're callable today and give us the opportunity to refund those. The average coupon on the bonds as they exist today is 4.23%. The original issue was for $1,650,000. The refunding, we've paid that down over the years. The refunding is $1,150,000 at an average coupon rate of 2.51%. So it will save the Park District over the life of these bonds approximately $216,000. Doing this it could change that savings when we do the actual sale. The process here is that you would approve the resolution this evening. We would go out for sale. We would bring you the actual bonds for sale and approval on the 13th of July, and then we would have a new amortization schedule and begin that payment process beginning May of 2022. So this is something I know the Park District has done in the past and will continue to look for opportunities to do that. And again, I thank you for consideration as a late addition. I would ask you to approve the resolution providing for the sale. If you have any questions, I'll certainly try to answer them for you.
Brock, what was the percentage rate, the new one?
The
2 point-
average rate over the life of the bond is 2.51%. The low rate on that is 2%. The high rate is 3%. And as it averages out over the life of the bond, it's 2.51.
And presently we're at 4.23.
4.23 is the average, correct?
Well, I think this is a no-brainer. Unless anybody else has any comments, I would make the motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and 2 seconds. That's how encouraging we are.
I get it.
Any discussion? All right, Dave, poll the board.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch.
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted?
I'll vote yes, and then I just want to say, Brock, you should be bringing one of these to us every month.
I'll do what I can.
Try to double them.
They're only callable every 7 to 8 years. So as soon as I can bring them, I will bring them.
And Commissioner Griggs?
Yes.
Move to adjourn?
All right, motion carries. Move to adjourn.
See y'all.
moved.